Don't be feeling blue, no, no. Shine your light all around, like I know you can do, baby. Yeah, I know you can do. Now some people call me. Welcome, my friends, to the Sage Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Today, my very special guest is Vince Russo. Vince was a major player and driving force behind the transformation of professional wrestling, as his vision and strategy during the 1990s catapulted wrestling into the upper echelon of sports entertainment. The conversation with Vince was both wide-ranging and introspective as he discusses his life inside and outside of the wrestling business. And so without further ado, here's Vince. Well, welcome everyone. We have a terrific show on tap with a guest that I am sure you will find very interesting. My guest is the one and only Vince Russo. Vince is an author, podcaster, pundit, and of course, very well known from his days as a mover and shaker within the professional wrestling business. And we're going to spend some time getting Vince's perspectives on how entertainment shapes our reality, whether we are aware of it or not. So Vince, thank you so much for accepting the invite. It's good to see you again.
Oh, Mike, I'm happy to be here. Listen, I told you on the last show, I don't know if anybody has ever told you this before. Mike, I'm your biggest fan. I want to clarify that from the jump. You know, Mike, the thing about you and a lot of people from my world, you know, russosbrand.com, a lot of my subscribers, they all said the same thing. Man, he's such a likable guy. And I mean, that's what it is about you, Mike. I mean, you discuss something very, very, very controversial, but I love the way you come across, like, you know, not trying to change anybody's mind, not trying to convince anybody. Here are the facts. Do what you want with them. That's why when you start talking about trolls, I could understand people trolling me because I'm a big loudmouth from New York. When you say people troll you, I really get hot because I'm like, how the heck can anybody troll Mike? He's such a great guy, man.
Well, as you know, Vince, anytime you lean up against someone's belief system, you're going to get pushback. It's the nature of the beast, and it goes with the territory. So anytime you put yourself out there into the public eye, there's going to be that segment of the population that will have an issue or a problem with whatever it is you're presenting or bringing forth. You know, for a lot of people, the Beatles are gods. And when Mike comes along and questions the storyline, people react. And some of the reaction is not productive. It's over the top. It's nasty. It's ugly and, you know, and all that stuff. And this includes people in the Paul is Dead research community itself. You would think there's unity, but there's not. So I just keep going and pushing forward, and I'll do what I believe is the right thing to do. So I'll just follow my heart. But I have 3 more presentations planned, which will take me out to the November timeframe. And then I'm going to transition back to my main channel where I cover a lot of different topics, like this show, for instance. The Paul is Dead topic has reached a point of diminishing returns for me. And I put a lot of content out, so for anyone who's interested, it's all there. But the time has come to move on and to explore other topics.
We'll see.
Well, let me ask you this, because you are a first-time guest on my show, and I always ask my first-time guests about their journey in life. So you're a guy from Long Island, like I'm a guy from Long Island. And I was saying before we started here, I went into your biography on Wikipedia, and I was taking a look, and I thought to myself, wow, what a colorful career you've had. And so how did you wind up from being this kid on Long Island to getting into the pro wrestling business? Because you had a very, very long career there as well.
Mike, I think you'll find this interesting because it kind of goes back to, I think, something we're both involved in, which is entertainment. Okay. Mike, I actually had one of the very first mom and pop video stores on Long Island. It was in Coram, Long Island. Man, I'm going way back to the late 80s. It was called Will the Thrills Video. I was so successful in the one store in Coram, I opened up a second store in Lake Ronkonkoma. Okay. Mike, this is before Blockbuster. Blockbuster did not exist in New York. I was successful. I mean, we had a very successful video store. I loved it, bro, because I love entertainment. I love the movies. I would have been doing that forever. But what happened, Mike, is within a matter of time, a Blockbuster moved in across the street from one of the stores, and down the road from the other.
Okay.
I was done, man. I could not compete with them on a financial level. Back then, Mike, a mom and pop shop, if a hot title came out, maybe you got 5 copies. Now all of a sudden Blockbuster's got 50. And I found out quickly too, there was no such thing as customer loyalty. Like if somebody wanted to see Dirty Dancing and I didn't have it, they were going to Blockbuster. So the writing on the wall was on the wall. I knew I was done. I could not compete with them no matter how hard I tried. And, growing up, man, I was a wrestling fan, but I was a wrestling fan like I was a fan of a lot of things. Like I was a Beatle fan and I was I was a baseball fan. I love the entertainment aspect of wrestling. The minute I saw it as a kid, I knew what it was. It was characters. It was storylines. It was, pomp and circumstance. It was larger than life. So when I had the video store, I ran a couple of big promotions with WWE wrestlers. And Mike, I mean, we drew thousands and thousands and thousands of people to those events. So we were so successful that somebody came into my store that had a wrestling radio show and they wanted me to sponsor the show. Well, what I did was I kind of wound up taking over the show, and I kind of wound up parlaying that into a show called Vicious Vincent's World of Wrestling, where I played a character. Okay. Now this was on, I don't know if but this was WGBB in Babylon. Okay. That's where the show was. But Mike, I had to pay for the airtime. So I had a business that was going out of business. Whatever money I was making, I was paying for. Bro, I was out of money. I was out of money. So what I did, bro, was I did something which I think was very clever. I wrote a letter to Linda McMahon because I knew, Vince McMahon's wife worked at the WWE. Bro, everybody and their mother were writing letters to Vince McMahon. Now, if I want a job, no, I'm going to write to his wife. So sure enough, bro, I wrote a letter to Linda McMahon and I just told her my story. Listen, man, this is what I do. This is where I'm at. And basically, I'm just looking for an opportunity. Well, luckily, I had a degree in journalism, so I was a writer. So a week later, Linda McMahon actually called me. And she basically said, yeah, our magazine is looking for some freelance writers. That's what I started doing. My video stores went out of business. You're going to get a kick out of this because everything is so Long Islandish. Okay. Bro, here I had a college degree. I had a young son. My video stores went out of business. Mike, I started working at PC Richards and Son.
I remember PC Richards. Yep.
Yeah. If you're on Long Island, you know PC Richards, but part-time, I was a freelance writer for the WWE magazine. I was getting like $150 a story. Then what happened was, the editor was let go. I interviewed for the job. I got the job as the editor and, I got my foot in the door at the WWE. Now, Mike, this is something that's going to be very interesting to you, and I think your listeners as well, because this is the part of it they don't know. Okay? When I got into the WWE, when I got in the offices in Stamford, Connecticut, I was a fan with a fan's perspective. Okay? Mike, I walked into a world where Vince McMahon was surrounded by his minions. And the more I viewed this world and I witnessed this world, I saw, and I still use the term to this day, there was a wrestling bubble. And inside this wrestling bubble, Mike, they had no idea what was going on in the real world. They were so out of touch with what was going on in the world and what really attracted a television viewer. So I started at the WWE in around the mid 90s. The problem was, Mike, they were doing wrestling on television from the 70s because that's all they knew. That's all they knew. This is how wrestling is done. There's the good guys with the white hats. There's the bad guys with the black hats. And, this is 1995 now. They're doing 1975 wrestling. And Mike, it's as hokey as shit. I mean, it's borderline embarrassing. So here I was, I became very vocal. And as the editor of the magazine, I started like creating my own angles because I couldn't stand what they were writing on TV. So I kind of went into business for myself in the magazine. I was very outspoken about the way they were presenting wrestling in 1995. Mike, they hit rock bottom. I mean, the WWE in the mid 90s was in a very bad place. They were in the red. They were losing money. They were losing their audience in droves because they were out of touch. And, finally, man, one day, Vince McMahon called me up to his office. All the minions were around the desk. They just came off a very bad rating on Monday Night Raw. Mike, I thought he called me up there to fire me. I thought he was going to make an example, out of me. Much to my surprise, he took the magazine, threw it down on his desk in front of everybody and said, "This is what our show needs to be." He, gave me the blessing, and that's when more or less the WWE Attitude Era was born. People know Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock. That's when that era was born. And all we did, Mike, was we brought wrestling up to speed. All of a sudden, it was wrestling for the time and not the cartoony stuff from 20 years before.
Okay, so let me ask this. You're this young guy, and you've come in and you're introducing a radically new business model and strategy to Vince McMahon. How hard was it to implement? Because I'm assuming not everyone was pleased with the new direction.
Mike, it was very difficult because the old guard was so used to doing things a certain way. They were looking at me like I was nuts. And Mike, they wanted me to fail because you got to think about it now. The old guard was there forever. I'm talking about people that started in the business 13 years old selling wrestling programs. They were old timers, bro. Their entire life was wrestling. All of a sudden, here's this Russo kid. He owned video stores on Long Island. It was the old who did he ever beat? So when I came in with this philosophy, and bro, the philosophy was really reality television. Mike, at that time, the only reality show out was The Real World on MTV. That was it. There was no reality television. So my whole thing was the worst thing you can do is insult the intelligence of your audience. That's the worst thing you can do. So my whole thing was we got to make this real. Because, Mike, in the wrestling bubble, no human being on this planet talks like a wrestler or does the things that wrestlers do. My whole thing was we've got to make them real people. So as the writer of the show, what I would do, Mike, is I would put myself in the boots of every character on the show. So like if I had a scenario like, so-and-so got hit by a car. Well, now I would go through the gamut. If this were Stone Cold Steve Austin, how would he react to this? Now, he would react differently than The Rock. The Rock would react differently from The Undertaker, whereas in the past, baby faces reacted this way, heels reacted that way. So now what I did was they all had their own personality. They all had their own character. And, they all wore gray hats. Mike, the thing I tell people all the time, and this is why the concept of baby faces and heels, that's what they call it in wrestling, doesn't work. Mike, in real life, good people do bad things and bad people do good things.
Yeah.
Everybody is a shade of gray. So that's what was kind of brought into it at the time.
So did you get any pushback, Vince, from, obviously from the old guard you did, but any of the new personnel that you were bringing in, the characters where they would argue with you or debate about the formulation of their character or where the script was going?
Well, Mike, I was very lucky because, like I said, at that point in time, Vince McMahon was in a position that he had nothing to lose. Okay. And the one thing about Vince McMahon was, if this was the direction we were going to go in, he was going to stick to it. He was going to be committed because Vince knew the old way was not working anymore. So the fact that Vince was committing to this direction, and Vince knew, Mike, in TV, you don't get ratings overnight. You've got to build ratings with good, consistent television shows. So Vince McMahon knew I got to give this time. Each show has to be better than the last. And what happened, Mike, was, first of all, Vince protected me. People knew if they messed with Vince Russo, they were messing with Vince McMahon. So I got to really concentrate on the nuts and bolts in the writing. I didn't have to worry about all the politics that go with wrestling. Well, what happened, Mike, is over time, the numbers started going up. More people started to come to the arena. And this is the key. The wrestlers started making more money. And as long as the wrestlers are making money, they're going to do whatever you tell them to do because they were in the business to make money.
So what's your take, Vince, on the audience in general? Did everyone or most people know it was entertainment? Or sometimes when I used to watch it, I used to think to myself, is everybody aware that this is entertainment? Some people appear to believe that the whole thing is real, which actually is a good thing from your perspective, because as real as you can make it, if people can connect at that level, it's wonderful. But did you ever have moments when you thought to yourself, wow, I think some of the audience is taking this too far?
Well, Mike, I used to love, man, really talking to a lot of the old timers that are no longer with us. A lot of great people from the past. I'm going to throw some names out there. I don't know how much you know wrestling, but guys like, George the Animal Steel and, Chief Jay Strongbow. And I mean, Lou Albano.
Yep.
And they used to tell me stories like George the Animal Steel, told me, there were, WWF used to play Shea Stadium. And George would tell me, bro, his real name was Jim Myers. Bro, they literally needed a police escort to and from the ring because people wanted to physically hurt them. But Mike, what happened was right around the beginning of the 90s, the internet. So the secret was out.
Yeah.
So now everybody is in on it. Everybody knows this is a work. So now the job to get people to suspend the disbelief got more and more and more difficult. That's why, Mike, what I would have to do is when a wrestler was ready to come up to the WWE, I would have to sit down with them and really dig deep to find out who they were. And to find out what made them different from everybody else. The reason why I did that, Mike, was, bro, these guys are not trained actors. So their character has to be an extension of themselves. They've got to take their personality and blow it up a million times over. So when they go out in front of the people, they believe what they're saying because there's a seed of truth to it. So, because if the audience doesn't believe what they're saying, we're dead. They're not actors, so they kind of got to play off of something that's real. And that was really, really the key. Finding out who they were and just blowing it up. That's how people got to hate me so much on television, Mike, because, I went on TV in WCW. And that's why so many people hate me to this day. They think I'm the character. And you'll appreciate this, Mike. I went on WC television in 1999 as myself, Vince Russo. My accent, I'm a New Yorker through and through. So, Mike, I knew, bro, people hate New Yorkers. People want to hate New Yorkers. So my whole point was, bro, if you want to hate New Yorkers, I'm going to give you So I took me as a New Yorker, but just blew it up. And bro, to this day, people literally hate me because they think I'm that guy. No, bro, I'm not that guy. I became who you wanted me to be based on being from New York and having an accent. So that's where the reality really comes in.
Staying on that thread, Vince, I mean, do you find that to be really something that makes you pause and step back, that people can actually have their reality shaped to such a degree?
Oh yeah, Mike. There was a time, Mike, after when I went to work for TNA later on in my career. Mike, we did the shows from a fairgrounds, okay, in Nashville, Tennessee. So you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay? One New Yorker to another. You know what I'm talking about. Mike, I swear to you, I used to perform in that building. Bro, this is 2000s. This is 2005, 6, 7. I would go outside after the show. Bro, people would be waiting for me to fight me. They wanted to fight. Mike, I would have to tell people literally, bro, that's not real. What you just saw is a show. Because physically, they literally wanted to fight me. And this, like I said, bro, this is 2005, 2006.
Yeah. So the whole power of the media, the ability to get your message out, to portray a certain image, like you said, with these personalities, right? They're really exaggerated versions of the actual person.
Yes.
And what you're saying is you had to keep that thread of who they really are. Otherwise, the thing would unravel.
Yeah, because in other words, if you gave them a character that wasn't who they were, now they had to go out there and act. So you had a couple of problems. Number one, they're not trained actors. Number two, if they didn't believe in what they were doing, the audience was not going to buy it. So there were very few wrestlers that like you could literally give a character to that had nothing to do with their personality, but they were good enough to go out there and pull it off. They're few and far between.
So what was the interviewing process like, Vince, when you were bringing in candidates to be wrestlers? How did you vet them? What characteristics were you looking for? I mean, did somebody just walk off the street, come in? Did they have to submit a resume? How did that work?
Well, how it worked is, there's a whole independent circuit, like in the country. And, wrestlers are wrestling in small towns in front of 20, 50, 100 people. They were at that time, they were sending in tapes, footage of themselves, VHS tapes at that time. If we saw somebody we were interested in, we would then bring them in and we would begin training them. I was never involved in that process, bro. I was a writer. I never got involved with wrestlers do what they do. But now once they were ready, once they were ring ready, they were brought to me because I would have to come up with a character. And that's when the conversation would take place where I would, just sit down with them and dig and dig and dig until I found something that made them unique, that they would be comfortable with, that would make them a standout.
But the training piece of it, Vince, I know you weren't involved in it, but it's obvious that they have to be very, very well trained regarding choreography. Otherwise, somebody could get really, really hurt.
That's it, Mike. It's not even the choreography. They've got to be trained so they don't get hurt. Mike, I stepped into the ring, and I had a little bit of training. Mike, I can't tell you how many concussions I received to the day that, like, I know I'm a different person today because of those concussions. If you're not properly trained, you can get hurt badly.
So what were some of the serious injuries, Vince? You said yourself you had concussions. What were some of the injuries that you saw or aware of that to this day bug you?
Well, Mike, this is where you really get into the ugly underbelly of professional wrestling. This is the part of it where I get heat because I'm not supposed to talk about things. It's supposed to be everything you see on TV. It's not. This is where wrestling started in the carnivals. Okay, that's literally where it started. And promoters would put on these fake fights in carnivals. Okay. Well, that progressed over the years, really starting with Vince McMahon Sr., Vince Jr.'s father, really starting with his dad. But from the get-go, Mike, these guys were hired as independent contractors. Okay, bro, there was no union in wrestling. There was no pension. There were no health benefits. And not only that, Mike, when you're dealing with independent contractors, Mike, it's every man for himself. There's no team unity. Wrestling's not a team. When you watch all these sports, it's team. Not wrestling is every man for themselves. This guy will act like he's your best friend and he's stabbing you in the back. Why? Because he wants that spot. Okay, the competition is fierce. And bro, I'll be honest with you, the promoters get off on that. Okay, so now, Mike, what happens? Guy gets in the ring, a guy gets concussed, a guy hurts his neck, a guy hurts his back, a guy, hurts his knee. Mike, they won't take themselves out of the game because they know there's 10 people there waiting to replace them. So what do, Mike? No, I'm fine. I'm not hurt. Now the pain pills.
Yep.
Now the pain, because Mike, you gotta realize some of these guys wrestle 300 times a year, every day. Now the pain pills, now the addiction to pain pills, because in their mind, bro, if they step out even for a week, somebody's going to step right in that spot and grab that spot. That's when you start seeing a lot of these early deaths in wrestling. There's a lot of addiction, Mike, to prescription medication where, you have these doctors that are marks, that are fans, giving the wrestlers whatever they need. Now, bro, in order to get through the next match, they're taking the painkillers. All of a sudden, bro, they're full-blown addicts. Next thing you know, bro, dead at 35, dead at 40. That's why you see so many deaths in professional wrestling. To this day, Mike, there is no union. There are no health benefits. There is no pension. It's unbelievable, bro, in 2019, the stuff that they get away with in wrestling, that any other form of a company, it would be absolute ludicrous.
Man, it sounds like it's completely unregulated.
1,000%. Yep.
Just for the audience, Vince, just so they know, I have a friend of mine who used to play professional football, and he told the exact same story with regard to football players, that knowing that if they have an injury and they step out, that there's 10 guys right behind them that'll play center, linebacker, whatever it may be. And so, they get into the prescription drugs in order to make the pain go away. And before you know it, the problem just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, everybody thinks with wrestling, Mike, even back in the day, everybody with wrestling, they think that the problem is steroids. No, bro, the problem was not steroids. The problem was prescription medication that these guys and gals would get hooked on in order to make it to the next show. That's always been the problem.
Okay. Well, a little shot of reality there for folks that are listening to the show. Now, what were the McMahons like? It sounds like in the beginning you had a good relationship, and what happened after that?
Well, I'll tell you exactly what happened, Mike, and it'll all make sense to you. Mike, when it comes to the McMahons, there's nothing in their world but wrestling, Mike. Nothing. 24/7 wrestling. I mean, when I tell you Vince McMahon did not watch TV, Vince McMahon did not go to the movies, Vince McMahon could not tell you what a loaf of bread cost. It is wrestling 24/7. That's all they know. And Mike, when you work for Vince, that company has to be number one. Your family takes a back seat. And that's the way he expects it to be. You're at his beck and call 24/7. And that's basically what happened with me, bro. I was there for about 5 years. I was very successful. To this day, the highest ratings in their history. Okay. But Mike, what happened was, Vince added a second show, never told me about it. And I wasn't even seeing my family. I had very, very young kids. So, Mike, listen, man, I'm an Italian guy from New York, very prideful, right?
Family oriented. Yep.
Very family orientated. So, bro, I literally had a meltdown. And, I just said to Vince McMahon, I said, listen, man, I at least want to move my wife and my family to where she's from. And whether I got to fly in and out on weekends, whatever I have to do. But my wife is raising my kids on her own. She's got no help, no support system. And man, Mike, I'll never forget, as cool as a cucumber, he looked me square in the eye. He goes, Vince, I don't know what your problem is. You make enough money now. Get a nanny to hire your kids. Mike, right there. It was game over. It was bro, but see, he didn't even know enough. You can't tell that to another husband, father, because not a lot of people think like you do. Bro, the WWE was more important to him than his family. Okay, bro, it's your baby. You invested all this money. You're going to live and die with this company. I was a writer, so I'm not going to have the same values that you have. But he didn't even know enough, bro, to know better than you just can't say that to somebody. And that was it, bro. That's why I left the company.
I spent a lot of time, Vince, as you know, in the corporate world, over 30 years, and I saw very, very similar behavior in the upper echelon where, hey, look, your life needs to be about this business. It overrides your family or anything else you got going on in your life. And if you can't accept that, then we've got a problem.
Yeah, and what happens, man? What happens to everybody is, bro, when you're in your 30s and you're full of piss and vinegar, that's one thing. But as you start getting older, bro, and you see those kids getting older and older, bro, those priorities, I mean, it happens to everybody. Bro, never happened to him. Bro, the guy just turned 74 years old. You would think he's still at every single TV. He's starting the XFL. You would think it's 74 years old. Do the math. Okay, bro, maybe I have 15 years left. You know what? I'm going to spend these 15 years enjoying life. Now, bro, I know he enjoys that, but I mean, Mike, I'm 58. I think about, my mortality every single day. I don't want to waste 1 minute of my time anymore. I don't know how much time I have here. And that's why I look at a guy like him that's so obsessed with wrestling. And I'm like, bro, like, seriously, like, that's all life is to you. It's not about the money. I mean, the guy's a billionaire. He wouldn't know how to spend his money. But I mean, it really, Mike, I think it gets to the point of like literally being obsessed. I don't know about you, Mike. I've never been obsessed with anything. Like, I've been a fan of a lot of things. I've never had that obsession. So it's really hard for me to understand that.
Yeah, I'm the same way, Vince. I have never been obsessed about anything. I've had a lot of interests, and when I was interested in something, I would put a lot of effort, and I would be very focused on what it is that I had to get done. But I always came back to the fact that what was most important to me is my family and my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Because without that, you really don't have anything.
Right.
You really don't. People who spend all of their time just maniacally focused on something, what they really need to do is to pause for a second and take a look back at their life and ask themselves, what am I getting out of this?
Mm-hmm.
And they might think that they're getting something out of it. But I think that if you're really contemplative and introspective and dig a little deeper, you'll find that maybe you should do a couple of things, maybe more than a couple of things, a little differently. Because you're not enriching your life if you're just very, very focused on one single thing and thinking that everybody who's around you has to be the exact same way.
Yeah.
Right? They have to think the same way as that person. And so, it's something, like I said, I've seen many, many times. So this is not something that surprises me at all.
And Mike, that's what the wrestling business has turned in today. The issue, and this is why I am so hated today. The issues that they have today, they've lost their entire casual fan audience. They literally changed the game, where there's no more psychology involved in matches. There's no more characters. There's no more storyline. They call it performance art. So it literally has become Circus Soleil. So all the casual fans like me that watched it for the characters and the art of the storytelling, must see TV, they're all gone. So they've gone from about 10 million people a week to about 2.5 million people. They've gone down to a niche audience. Now all these people now that watch wrestling, Mike, they're all obsessed with it. Like 24/7. That's all they talk about. They're obsessed with it. I know guys that have, we call them in the wrestling business dirt sheets, where they do podcasts. They give all the inside information and stuff. Mike, there are guys my age that are obsessed with this. And I'm like, bro, at the end of the day, these are fake fights.
Right.
Like when we were kids, Mike, and we used to wrestle in our bedroom, that's what this is. You're getting obsessed over fake fights, and it's superseding everything else in your life. Mike, that blows my mind.
Yeah, that's because, Vince, a lot of people do not sit back and reflect on life. They don't never ask themselves, why am I here? What's my purpose? And we were talking about age before. And you're 58 and I'm 60. And what a lot of folks don't realize is a lot of people don't make it to 58 or 60 years old.
Yeah.
So if you're at our age or a little younger, a little older, whatever it may be, you can't take for granted that you're going to be here tomorrow. So I think that it's in anybody's best interest who is, like I said before, so focused on something that it has commandeered their entire life, that you need to press the pause button and sit back a little bit and maybe take a look at reprioritizing some things that are going on in your life.
You know, Mike, I'm a firm believer in God. I really didn't become a Christian till later on in life, but God recently, he showed me something that has made it so simple for me. Every time, if I get upset about something, or if I say, now I start asking myself this question: is it going to matter when I'm dead? You know what I'm saying? Like, my wife gets upset, the dog lays on the couch, and I'm like, is it really going to matter when I'm dead? I mean, I'm 50. I don't know how much time I have here. And it's the same with these people obsessed over fake. Bro, are they going to matter when you're dead? What's really going to matter when you're dead? What's going to matter, bro, is the impact you had on the world, the impact you had on your kids, the impact you had on your family, the impact you had on your friends. That's what's going to matter. And like I said, Mike, I've never been obsessed over anything, so it's very hard for me to understand.
Yeah, I tell folks all the time, Vince, a key component to being happy in life is reconnecting back to spirit, back to God. So many people, they give it lip service, so they never even think about it, And but look, to each his own. Each person has got to find their path based upon their own trial and tribulations.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yes.
If you stumble enough times or you realize you come to the conclusion that you've been on the wrong path, then you'll make that turn.
Right.
So about your family and all of this, right? So we're talking about the pressures that were put on you and the expectation that you had to eat, breathe, and crap wrestling. What was that like for your wife, and what was that like for your children? I mean, did you buffer them as much as you possibly could, but did your wife ever go to you and say, Vince, maybe you should do something else?
Well, Mike, first thing is I kept them as far away from the business as possible. See, Mike, and two, people always have an issue. The people that hate me in wrestling, they always have an issue with this. Mike, it was my job. That's it. I looked at it as a job. When I was in the wrestling business, I was not obsessed with wrestling. It was a job. I went to work every day. I did the absolute best that I could. Just like when I own my video stores. Just like now when I do podcasting. It's a job. So I never let that spill over into my life. I kept my family as far away from as possible as I could from the business. But Mike, what I really tried to do to accommodate it was the time that I did have with them. I mean, I tried to give them 200%. But I got to tell you, Mike, it's things like I'm 58 now. Mike, I miss my kid's first home run. I never forgot that. And now when I look back of how ungrateful Vince McMahon was, I'm like, what were you thinking? Like, what were you doing? You literally put your family on the back burner. I can't change that. But that's why I try to tell people I don't want you to be in my spot. And that, you know, I gave this company and I gave this man everything I had, bro. And I ignored what should have been the most important thing. I did not give that the proper time. And, you know, bro, that stuff stays with you. It doesn't go away. I can't remember my kids growing up. I can't remember them growing up. My wife's got to tell me stuff all the time. I can't remember it.
You know, Vince, we all have those moments, you know, and you think back and you think to yourself, well, I should have done this better. I should have been there. The way we have to approach this is that it's life. But the most important thing is that you get to a point where you realize that that type of lifestyle cannot continue.
Right.
That's the most important thing. I have the same thing. I look back, I think to myself, because I had a career. I wasn't here. I wasn't there. I was doing this. I wasn't doing that. And then, you know, I'm older now and I look back at it and I said, what was I doing all that for?
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
We know what it was for, folks. It was for money. You need it, obviously, to be able to survive, but it cannot get to a point where it becomes the controlling entity or mechanism in your life.
Right.
Because you will miss out on a lot if you're driven by that. Now, the other thing I wanted to cover with you is when we look at the wrestlers outside the ring, were there any that were personal friends of yours that you got along with really well and had a friendship with?
You know, Mike, it's another thing about the wrestling business. There are no friends, man. It's all a facade. Mike, it's all a facade. And you know how you know that? I'll tell you how you know that. I was the head writer. Okay, bro. So in their mind, Vince was the guy that could make me or break me. When I was the head writer, Mike, everybody was my best friend. Mike, being a New Yorker, see, people don't understand this. Being a New Yorker, I was smart to that. Okay, I knew that, bro, you're not my friend. Like, you want me to write you in the show. Like, you're not my friend. And bro, you know, it's just comical because I knew that. I knew it was all a facade. I knew it was all phony bullshit. And Mike, the day I left the WWE was the day my phone stopped ringing.
Yep.
And that's how it is, bro. There are no friendships. You know, the old thing, keep your enemies close. It's bizarro land, Mike. It really is. To this day, I call it the wrestling bubble. They have no concept of what a friend is. They don't understand what friendship means. Mike, they all cheat on their wives. You know, to me, that was the biggest crime in the world, Mike. Here you are living your dream on the road every day, at the bar after the show. Okay, your wife is home by herself raising your kids, and you're going to freaking cheat on your wife? Like, to me, that was the lowest form, but that's the norm. Mike, I've worked with thousands and thousands of wrestlers. I think I knew one person who stayed loyal to their wife. That's the world. And, you know, like I said, Mike, the older you get, you're like, man, I don't want to be a part of that world. I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. And, you know, Vince, I follow you on Twitter, and I know that, and you and I discussed this actually in the last show too, and we talked about criticism of me, criticism of you. How do you deal with it? Do you deal with it differently today than you did back then? Because, you know, many times, folks, the criticism, as much as we don't want it to affect us, some of it can be very hurtful because it's not true. It's fabricated. People just saying things for the sake of trying to get a rise out of whoever it is that they're attacking. So how do you deal with it today, Vince, versus how you used to deal with it way back when?
Oh, Mike, it's complete night and day. I mean, back in the day, bro, when I was that, you know, guy in his mid-30s, bro, you want to go toe-to-toe like we'll go toe-to-toe. I mean, bro, you know, if you attacked me or you said something to me, bro, I was gonna bite your head off. And bro, I always knew I'm gonna win because, bro, like from where I'm from, New York's dog eat dog, bro. You know, don't think you're gonna, you know, politic and backstab me behind my back. I know what you're doing. I know what's going on. And bro, I would let people have it. Okay, bro, let them have it. But now, bro, like as I get older, you know, Mike, here's the worst thing. This is the most hurtful thing. This is how society is today. Okay. But this is how I deal with it. Mike, I'm out there like on a daily basis. Before I came on this show, I just finished doing a show called That's Life. That's Life is a show I do every week. It's the most important show I do. I want all roads of all my other shows to go to this show. This is where I talk about life. And I literally talk about God. And I believe my path in life took place the way it did because God knew, Vince, I want you to develop a following. I want you to develop a base of people that will only understand me through you. You know, you can talk their language. You're not going to beat them over the head with the Bible. You're so rough around the edges. You're a sinner, but I can get my word to these people through you. So Mike, I have no problem saying I'm a believer in God. God first. I do a show about God. Well, bro, the problem today, the most hurtful thing with social media, bro, is I knew, Mike, once I went out there with my belief, I'm going to be attacked by the world. I mean, you accept that. That's part of the game. The war that you got to put on the armor of God and say, you know, let's go. But Mike, how they attack you today is you're a homophobe. You're a racist. You're a sexist. You know, that shit that to my core, like it's the most hurtful thing that anybody can say. Mike, I have somebody running my website who literally is a transgender and I love her to death. Mike, I was a guy that put the WCW title on a black man because, bro, he was being suppressed. And he was never given the opportunity. I came along. I gave him the opportunity. It's the proudest moment in my life that I was able to do this for this individual. But my point is, no matter what stuff like that is on your resume, that's ignored. And then you're a racist. You're a sexist. You're this or that. That's the hardest thing to deal with. The way I deal with it today is I know, bro. Once I accepted, I am here to glorify God. I am here to spread his name, bro. That's why I'm here. And that's what you're going to get because the world does not want that. Like you said earlier, Mike, the world wants you to believe money is everything. You know, expensive cars, big houses, success. That's everything. That's what the world wants you to believe. So when you have somebody like me saying, bro, wait a minute. They're going to throw everything they can at you. And that's knowing that, bro, God just gives me the strength to get through it. And I mean, I just ignore it the best I can today.
That's all you can do. There's a lot of black-hearted people out there. That's my conclusion. So what I try to do, Vince, is I need to stay elevated. I need to stay above and focus on the positive. Because if you dive into their crap, into their nonsense, then you're connected into that very negative, dense stuff. And what is that going to do? That's going to take somebody like yourself or me or anybody else who's trying to do good in life. It's going to bring them down.
And that's what they want.
Exactly. So the best thing to do is what I do is I try to ignore them as much as I possibly can. Every once in a while, I do have to step out and maybe set the record straight on something, but I try to do that extremely sporadically because you also don't want to bring any attention to the people that are engaged in this type of negative stuff.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Right. So it's really a fine line. It's a balancing act, I think, when you're trying to deal with that type of stuff.
It really is. Yep. The worst thing is now though too, Mike, it's like, you know, my son, Will, he's my oldest son and he's very, very creative. And like now he's trying to establish a presence on social media. I know he's going to get all the Vince Russo shit. You know what I mean? And that's the part of it. Like, you know, really, like, come on, man, you know, and he's hearing it, you know, I mean, people have already gotten his phone number and they're texting him stuff. And I'm like, that's the part of it where like, I want so hard to be able to protect him But like the first thing I had to tell him is, bro, if you put yourself out there, this is what you're going to get, you know?
Yeah. Many people, they have no boundaries.
Yeah.
And they think nothing of doing stuff like that. You know, I spend a lot of time protecting my friends and family, isolating them from the work that I do. Because look, I'm doing it. I know what it's like to be involved in the arena of the public. So I'm willing to deal with it. But I don't want to bring anybody who doesn't want to be there to have to be involved in it.
Right.
Because a lot of times, look, there's a lot of good stuff. So let me just, I don't want to paint a negative picture here. There's a lot of very, very, very good people out there, positive people, people you like to interact with. So that's the vast majority of folks. But you have this segment. It's a small segment. But that small segment is very, very nasty. It can be very, very ugly.
Yes, it is. Yes.
You know. So, Vince, when you look back at your career, what would you consider to be the highlight of the career? And then we'll get into what would you view as the part of your career that presented personal challenges to you that you had to work through?
Well, you know, no doubt, Mike, the highlight of my career was there's a wrestler, you know, he still works for the WWE today, very, very popular. His name was Booker T. And, you know, the African-American guy. When I went to WCW, there was such a level of politics going on that somebody like him, bro, that was a happy-go-lucky guy. He was a company guy. He did whatever you asked him to do. You know, there was a thumb on him. He was never going to be able to get through to a certain level. And I remember, you know, one day I went into a creative meeting and there was probably about 6 guys there. And I said, if you could put the title on anybody right now, who would it be? And every single person in that room said Booker T. And at that point, I made the decision. And Mike, my career was almost ruined by the old guard for making that decision, because I was the kind of guy, bro, you're not going to play politics with me. I'm not a political guy, bro. Like, and people really get pissed off. You know, like when you don't play the political game and you try to do everything on the uppity up, they can't deal with that because all they know is politics. Here's what I tell people all the time, Mike. There's politics in everything. But in wrestling, it's a political cesspool. And Mike, there were times I was defeated by the politics because I was not going to play that game. I'm not going to do that. But in my mind, Mike, and I say this because I hope a lot of people will be able to benefit from this. Here's what's going to happen. The reason people get involved in the politics and the backstabbing, okay, is because they know you're better than them. On a legitimate level, they can't surpass you. They know you're better. And Mike, 9 times out of 10, you know why you're better? Because you work harder. Because you work harder. You put the work in. So now they know this guy's better than me. I don't want to work as hard as this guy. So what am I going to do? I'm going to take the shortcut. And I'm going to talk about him behind his back, and I'm going to start all gossip about him. You know, so there were a couple of times in my career I knew exactly that this was going on. I knew it. I would turn, Mike, you know, when you turn around, you know, 2 people are talking and you turn around and you look at them and then all of a sudden they go their separate ways.
Yeah.
It was that all the time. Okay. But Mike, here's what I knew. And this is what I tell people all the time. My thing was, if you're going to be worked and they're going to win you over by burying me and they're going to get my spot, guess what? They got the spot. Now they're going to have to deliver.
Right.
They weren't capable of delivering. That's why they were taking shortcuts. So what's going to happen? Okay, bro, take my spot because I'm not going to go toe to toe politically with you. And I will go home and I will sit there and I will wait for you to fail because you took shortcuts, and then they'll call me back. And that's what happened numerous times. But my most defining moment was giving somebody an opportunity that really, really deserved it and could just not get past the political cesspool.
Okay, so the downside or the challenges would be working through that cesspool of politics?
Oh man, Mike, and here's what I say all the time about the wrestling business. You can't be a nice guy and survive in the wrestling business. You can't, Mike. It's sharks. It's a sea of sharks, bro. So what happens, Mike, is you're kind of forced to create this hard shell around you. Because if you don't create this hard shell around you, they'll eat you alive. But then, Mike, all of a sudden what happens is you take a step back and you kind of see what you're becoming. And you're becoming one of them just in order to survive. That's the only reason, because if I don't harden myself, they will kill me and I will be out of work and I've got a family and a wife. So you wind up creating this shell around yourself. All of a sudden, bro, you're somebody you're not, and you don't like what you see. And when you get to that point, bro, you got to make a decision. You're either going to go all in, bro, or you're either going to walk away. And I mean, I walked away, bro, because I wasn't that guy.
How long were you in the business, Vince, before you walked away from it?
Oh my God. I was just telling a story on That's Life. I got in the business in 1991. I walked away from the business in 2012.
Okay.
Mike, you want to hear something fascinating? I'll tell this real quickly, but I was just, this will blow you away, Mike. Mike, you know how, like you said, when you were working in the corporate world, it was about the money. It was about the money. It was about the money. Mike, I got married at 22 years old. Okay. With me, Mike, it wasn't about the money and it wasn't about the amount of money. Okay. I was always concerned with, supporting my family. I always had this fear of not being able to support my family. I think a lot of it comes from getting married at 22. You know, I was still a kid. Now I had this wife who was dependent on me. We had children early. So my fear was always the fear of not being able to support I never wanted, Mike, I swear to God, man, I sit here 58 years old. My most prized possession is my vinyl collection. Like that. And Mike, you know where I get my vinyl collection from? I go to freaking thrift stores and find me gems for $2.
Right.
Like I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy with the big house and the big cars. I'm not that guy. So Mike, my whole life, you know, I really started hating wrestling in about 99. Okay. I really started the politics. When I went from WWE to WCW, the politics kicked my ass. And in 99, I started hating it. I wanted to get out. I wanted to get out. I wanted to get out. You know, I became a born again Christian about 2005-ish. And I kept saying to God, I know you don't want me here. What am I going to do to support my family? I mean, Mike, when your resume reeks professional wrestling, who's going to freaking hire you? You know, I'm in my 40s now. I'm 50. Who's going to hire me? So it was always, God, I know you don't want me here. How am I going to support my family? I was miserable. Mike, one day I was on the road in Orlando. I was in my hotel room and I really had reached the breaking point. I literally got down on my knees, and for the first time ever, I just started bawling. And I'm like, God, I get it. You don't want me here. I am not supposed to be here. How am I going to support my family? That's the question I kept asking, right? So Mike, that day I went to work and it went from bad to worse. So I found a conference room and I locked myself in that conference room and I literally had to take out my Bible because I had to ground myself. I had to ground myself because I was losing it. Right. So bro, I'm getting some of God's word and I bow my head and I'm like, God, I get it. I hear you loud and clear. How am I going to support my family? Okay. Mike, I got up and I put my hand in my pocket to get a piece of gum. You know, the gum that's like the square pack and you got to flip it open gimmick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mike, I reach in my pocket. I open up the gum. Mike, two $50 bills, brand new, neatly folded, like they had never been touched, fell out of the gum. Mike, I was just, hold on one second. I carry them around me to this day. Mike, these are them. I mean, literally, like they just came off the mint. Okay. Fell out of my gum. Now, Mike, you got to understand, I never have money. I don't use money. Everything I do, I use my credit card. I want a cup of coffee at McDonald's. I'll use my credit card for $1. I never have money. So now all of a sudden these two $50 bills fall out of my gum. And I'm like, literally it was God saying, like, bro, like what don't you understand? What don't you understand? Mike, the first thing I did was I called my wife. Did you put money in my pocket? No, Vin, like, I know you don't take money. You know, Mike, I don't go to the bank. I don't take withdrawals. To this day, I have no idea. But when that happened, Mike, I knew, bro, if you don't walk away after that, you might as well spit in the face of God, because there's nothing he will be able to do to convince you that he knows what you need. And as long as you're loyal and faithful to him, he's going to take care of you. And literally, that was the last TV taping I went to. I walked away after that. It's going to be 8 years ago in February. Mike, I didn't know what podcasting was then. I didn't know what Twitch was then. I didn't know what Patreon was then. Those things did not exist. Now, what do, bro? I sit here behind my computer and I make a living and I don't have a worry in the world.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. A lot of people will be able to resonate with what I refer to as divine intervention. It's there. It's real. Of course, there are going to be the naysayers, and that's fine. You could be a naysayer. But I've had situations like that in my own life, Vince, where out of the blue, something happened, and it was a message. It was clearly a message, right? And many times those messages are, it's okay. Push through it. It's okay. You're going to be all right.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be all right. You know, but the most important thing, too, about being all right is, and you have it in you, is the ability to work hard, like you mentioned before.
Yep.
Put your head down, push through it, work hard. When you persevere, good things will happen. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yep.
It takes time, but you will build it.
Yep.
You know, and I've had the same types of experiences in my own life. You know, and you mentioned, I wanted to just go back to this a little bit about being concerned about not being able to support your family. I have a bit of that myself, you know, because my mom and dad, we were very blue collar growing up on Long Island. You know, mom stayed at home and dad was a cop.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and contrary to what a lot of people might believe, cops, especially back in those days, we're talking about the 1960s and into the 70s, they didn't make a lot of money.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, so when in our household, it was always, I had a very good childhood. I have 2 other brothers and a sister, and it was very good. But when I look back at it, we didn't have a lot, which meant you can be happy without having all of that material stuff all around you.
Yep.
You know, but what it also taught me was I needed to work hard, like my dad worked hard.
Yep.
In order to keep the food on the table and to keep, you know, a roof over the head of your family.
Yep.
So, yeah, these are all things that help you to get through times when, you know, you're having challenges in life.
Yeah.
You're doubting yourself, or you're doubting, you know, what's going to happen, or you think you're trapped. That's the thing, right? You think you're trapped.
Yeah.
I'm in this corner and I don't see a door out.
Yeah. It's like too, Mike, it's like with me, like I said, you know, I've got like 3 arms of the Russo brand. You know, I've got my subscription base, you know, russosbrand.com. I got my Patreon. And then I've got Twitch. As long as I keep those 3 arms going, I'm fine. But Mike, I'm human. So in the very, very back here somewhere, there is, what if this all stops tomorrow? Like, then what? Like, what am I going to do? What if this stops tomorrow? But now I can go the next step and I could say this. If it stops tomorrow, it's because it's supposed to stop tomorrow.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying? So like I can be cool with it. If it stops, it's because it's supposed to, and you're supposed to be on to something else. I didn't have that in the past.
Yeah. What happens is you develop this intuitiveness that says to you, this has run its course. You've done as much as you could possibly do with whatever it is that you're working on.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to shift gears.
Mm-hmm.
Where people get themselves into trouble is when they ignore that intuitiveness, that feeling in your gut. When you ignore that, typically what happens is something not so good winds up down the road for you.
Right.
People ignore that, and they shouldn't ignore that. Now, you've also written 2 books, right?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So did you want to talk a little bit about the books?
Yeah, no, bro, that was my biggest, outside of, the Booker T situation. I mean, being a writer and going to school for journalism and being editor of my college newspaper and all that, my number one goal was writing a book. So, being able to write a book, far superseded anything that I did in wrestling, any television show that I ever wrote. And then the funny thing, Mike, is then, I sit down. My first book was called Forgiven. I put my heart and my soul in this book. And, my mother was alive at the time. And like, I really knew like the fact that this book is going to be published would like mean the world to her. Mike, I was so raw and so honest in this book. I was the hardest on me than anybody else. And then, the book comes out, and then what do you get? Everything in the book is a lie. So I'm like, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. I literally sat down. I wrote every word in the book myself. I literally sat down and spent a year writing a book of lies. But it's stuff like that it's just like you gotta shake your head, man, because it's like no matter what you do. But writing those books, bro. I mean, that was that was really monumental for me.
And you have a degree in journalism.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So how long did it take to write the books, Vince? I'm always interested because I've never written a book, and people have said to me, Mike, someday you should write a book. And I'm thinking, I don't think I have time to do it. So.
Mike, it sucks. Like, Mike, remember the old Odd Couple show? Remember Tony Randall and Jack Klugman? Yeah. I'll never forget this, bro, because Jack Klugman, as Oscar Madison said this once, he says, a good writer hates to write, but loves to have written. And that's it in a nutshell. The process of writing sucks. And bro, there is such a discipline to writing. If you do not sit down every day and write and force yourself to write, it's not going to happen. Bro, I love this story. To this day, Jerry Seinfeld has a big calendar in his house every day of the year because he writes every day.
Yeah.
And he has to write every day. Seinfeld at this point, and he just checks the days off. But that's it, Mike. You have to force yourself. You got to grind through it. You can't get writer's block because there's a million reasons why you want to quit, because it's a difficult process.
Yeah. That's part of the reason why I don't think I've started.
Yeah. I mean, people keep asking me about a third book, and I'm like, just no way. I mean, there's no way. I don't have it in me.
When I left the business world, and I was there for 3 decades, people would ask me afterwards, do you miss it? And one of the most interesting phenomenons, Vince, is that I very rarely think back at it. I know I did it. I know I was there. I know what I used to do. I knew I was good at it, but I don't spend any time whatsoever thinking back on it, lamenting. It's just that my life is in a completely different place now, and I'm much, much happier now. So how about yourself? It sounds like maybe you're in the same boat.
No, I wish, man. Mike, the problem is it's in my face every day.
Okay.
But Mike, I have said this now. You know how like you talk about there comes a time when you got to go on. Mike, I have said this. I'm 58 years old. I'm going to be 59 in January. I've said the day I turn 60, I am no longer talking about wrestling. I am no longer talking about it. I would love to be able to continue on my podcasting career and my entertainment career. But I've made a vow to myself at 60, it stops, because Mike, it's so juvenile and it's so childish and it's so meaningless. And, bro, every day it's in my face. Mike, the only time I'm really on Twitter and social media is when I have to promote something.
Yeah.
You and I both know, bro, when you're in business for yourself, you have to promote it. If you stop promoting it, it will die.
Right.
So I go online to promote it. But, the minute I'm online, there's 10 comments about, every single day right in my face. And I sit there. I don't say anything. I'm not bringing the comments on, but that's why, I've made the decision, man, I'm going to suck this up till I'm 60. But once I'm 60, man, I literally am going to eliminate it from my life.
What path do you think you're going to take once you hit 60?
Man, Mike, I got to tell you, this sounds crazy, but I wrote one of the most popular shows in cable history. I was a character on TV. Mike, going all the way back to WGBB, I've always loved radio. I love freaking radio. That's why I'm so lucky with podcasting, and I'm blessed with podcasting, and it's the next best thing. Bro, I've always wanted to be a radio guy. I still pursue that dream. There are some DJs and stuff that I talk to, here in Colorado. But again, bro, it's such red tape. And it's so political. But again, my attitude is, if it's supposed to happen, it will happen. If it's not, it won't. But I would love to be able to continue, broadcasting and podcasting. I was influenced in my life greatly by Stern. I always wanted to do what Howard did, always, bro. And I just hope, when I step away from wrestling, that's kind of what the brand turns into.
Now, what advice, Vince, do you have for anyone looking to get into the entertainment business? Forget about wrestling specifically, but the entertainment business in general. I mean, if somebody said to you, "Hey, Mr. Russo, I want to get into entertainment," what tips do you have as far as what to look out for and what to avoid?
Well, Mike, what's a great thing nowadays? I mean, man, there is such a need for content. There are so many, outside of television, the internet, there is such a need for content. This didn't exist when I graduated college. I've dabbled enough, bro, in LA and Hollywood and that whole scene. I've dabbled enough in it. Mike, I know without a shadow of a doubt, if you have any talent and you're driven and you plant yourself in the middle of that town, you will find work. There isn't a doubt in my mind. Being a content provider is what everybody is looking for nowadays. That ship has sailed with me. I'm just too old. But if you have the talent and if you're driven and you're willing to move yourself there, I honestly think that you'll be successful. I honestly believe that.
Yeah, it's what we said before. You have to work really hard. You have to apply yourself. Things are just not going to fall into your lap, Now, Vince, before we wrap up here, I just wanted to ask if there's anything else specifically that you wanted to talk about, anything that was on your mind that you wanted to get out to the audience.
Yeah, it's just, it's what we're talking about, man. Like I said, I talk about it all the time about the wrestling bubble, but it's not just the wrestling bubble. There's a lot of bubbles out there. And man, bro, people just tend to get caught up in things that just don't matter. You know what I say all the time, Mike? I say, if you're putting all your attention in something that really doesn't matter, what that means is, bro, you're not paying attention to the things that really do. Bro, I know when I became a Christian, this is how I knew that I became a Christian, Mike. The things that once meant the world to me, all of a sudden meant nothing. and the things that meant nothing all of a sudden meant the world. And the reason why, like, I preach this, to nausea is, man, it took me a long time to figure this stuff out. I wish there was somebody when I was that 35-year-old guy at the WWE. I wish there was somebody saying these things to me. Mike, a lot of times in life, you have to figure things out for yourself. Okay. I totally get it. But man, I'm just telling you, as time goes on, you are going to figure out these things. And you're going to look back and you're just going to say, man, why did it take me so long? So that's why, I mean, if I could, just share my story and let people know about that, hopefully there's one idiot out there that listens to what I have to say.
I say the same thing to my daughter, Vince. I would talk to her about stuff, and sometimes she'd say to me, Dad, why are we having this conversation? I said, because it took me a long time to figure it out.
Yeah, man.
And if I can shorten it up for you, you could figure it out a little sooner in life.
Yeah.
It's going to be a whole lot better,
Yeah. Yeah. That's what that's the thing. And, it's like, I don't want you to go through what I did.
Right.
There's no need for you to go through, but 99.9% of the time, listen, man, they're just going to have to figure it out themselves and they'll find out, you know?
That's the way it works, right? That's life. So Vince, where can the audience connect with you online?
Okay, a couple of places. I do, Mike, again, you talk about hard work. Mike, we have a podcast network. Mike, I do over a dozen shows a week. I mean, there's a show every single day. Guys, it's like less than $1 a week. That's at russosbrand.com. I do a show on Westwood One, bro, and there's a Patreon that goes with that, and that's patreon.com /Russo TWC. And then like Twitch.
All right, so I'm going to ask my audience to make sure that they check out Vince's shows on his platforms. And Vince, I will put all of the links in the description box below. And again, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. It was a great discussion.
All right, thank you very, very much, Mike. I'll talk to you soon.
And that concludes another Sage or Quay interview, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Links to my guests' websites and social media are listed in the description box below. And as always, I would like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can find all my social media and web links by visiting my hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to check out my music and album releases. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone with the next show. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.
I was walking down this dusty